When I asked her to support me for my presentation, she mocked, "Support won't improve you, you're a joke to everyone around you." I just smiled. But when she realized who recruited me, she nearly screamed. The funny thing about rock bottom is that it gives you a solid foundation to build from, though I didn't know that yet when everything came crashing down around me in what felt like slow motion. I was Ryan Martinez, 32 years old, and until 18 months ago, I had what most people would call the perfect life, a six-figure salary as a senior cybersecurity analyst at TechCore Industries, one of Austin's most prestigious technology corporations, a downtown condo with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lady Bird Lake that I'd saved 3 years to afford, and Ashley Chen, the brilliant, ambitious woman I was planning to propose to after dating for 3 incredible years. I specialized in penetration testing and advanced threat assessment, the kind of highly technical work that kept major corporations safe from sophisticated digital attacks, and I was genuinely exceptional at it. My team had successfully identified and prevented 3 major security breaches in just 2 years, including one attempt by Russian hackers to steal customer data that would have cost the company an estimated $12 million in damages and regulatory fines. I'd earned recognition as one of the rising stars in Austin's competitive tech scene, spoke at cybersecurity conferences, and had been featured in a TechCrunch article about innovative defense strategies against state-sponsored attacks. My future looked absolutely bulletproof, which made what happened next feel like getting hit by a freight train I never saw coming. Then TechCore's board announced their revolutionary digital transformation initiative in a company-wide meeting that started with buzzwords about innovation and ended with pink slips, which was corporate speak for, "We're firing everyone whose job can be outsourced to contractors in Mumbai who'll work for 25% of your salary and no benefits." 27 highly skilled professionals lost their jobs that Tuesday morning in March, including my entire cybersecurity department, the quality assurance team, and half of the software development staff. Just like that, my steady income vanished along with my health insurance, stock options, company car, and the professional identity I'd spent 5 years carefully building through late nights, weekend certifications, and genuinely caring about protecting people's data. Ashley worked as a senior marketing director at Apex Digital Solutions, a prestigious tech consultancy housed in one of those intimidating glass and steel towers downtown, where she specialized in helping Fortune 500 companies navigate digital transformations and market disruption strategies. Ironically, the exact kind of consulting firm that probably advised TechCore's board to gut their internal cybersecurity department in favor of cheaper offshore contractors. She made excellent money, had comprehensive benefits, worked with high-profile clients, and operated in that rarefied atmosphere where everyone wore designer clothes, drove luxury cars, and casually discussed disrupting entire industries over artisanal coffee that cost more than some people's hourly wage. Her office had a view of the Austin skyline, her business cards were printed on heavyweight paper, and her LinkedIn profile read like a masterclass in corporate achievement. When I first got laid off, Ashley was genuinely supportive in ways that made me love her even more, telling me to take my time processing the shock, use my severance pay strategically, and that we'd navigate this challenge together like true partners should. "You're absolutely brilliant at what you do," she said that first week, holding me on our couch while I processed the surreal experience of sudden unemployment after years of job security. Any company in this city would be incredibly lucky to have someone with your skills and track record. This is just a temporary setback, not a reflection of your worth. I believed every word she said, and more importantly, I believed completely in our relationship and our shared future. The severance package was reasonably generous, 6 months of full salary plus benefits continuation and a small stock payout, so instead of immediately jumping into another corporate position that might disappear just as quickly in the next round of cost-cutting, I made the decision to use this unexpected time to launch my own cybersecurity consulting firm. I had the technical expertise, the industry connections, the client references, and what I thought was the unwavering support of the woman I planned to marry. Starting my own business had always been a dream I'd pushed aside for the security of corporate employment, but suddenly I had both the motivation and the financial cushion to take that entrepreneurial leap. The first few months of building my consulting practice weren't easy, but they weren't devastating either. and I actually found myself energized by the challenge of creating something entirely my own. I spent my days networking at industry events, reaching out to former colleagues who'd landed at other companies, developing comprehensive security protocols for small and medium-sized businesses that couldn't afford the rates that firms like Ashley's charged their Fortune 500 clients, and slowly building a reputation as someone who delivered results without the corporate overhead. My work was solid, my growing client base was genuinely satisfied with the protection I provided, and I was methodically building something that belonged entirely to me rather than shareholders I'd never met. Ashley seemed genuinely proud of my entrepreneurial spirit during those early months, bragging to her friends at dinner parties about her boyfriend's innovative new business venture, posting supportive messages on social media about following your dreams and taking calculated risks, and even introducing me to a few potential clients through her extensive professional network. But as the months passed and my client base remained modest rather than explosive, her attitude began shifting in ways that were subtle at first, then increasingly obvious, and finally devastatingly cruel in ways I never could have anticipated from someone who claimed to love me. The transformation of Ashley's support into cold disdain happened gradually, like watching someone you love slowly turn into a stranger who happened to share your living space and occasionally acknowledged your existence between her increasingly important work commitments and social obligations. At first, the changes were so subtle I convinced myself I was imagining them, a slightly dismissive tone when I mentioned landing a new client, a barely perceptible eye roll when I took business calls during her favorite television shows, or the way she'd changed the subject whenever I got excited about a particularly challenging security assessment I'd completed. But within 6 months of launching my consulting practice, her patience had transformed into something much colder and more cutting, as if my professional struggles were a personal embarrassment she had to endure rather than a temporary setback we were navigating together as partners. She began treating my consulting work like an elaborate hobby I was too stubborn to abandon rather than a legitimate business venture, making snide remarks about my little computer projects whenever her coworkers asked about my career, and sighing dramatically whenever I took client calls during her important work events or dinner parties with her sophisticated Apex Digital Solutions colleagues. The woman who had once bragged about dating an innovative cybersecurity entrepreneur now introduced me at social gatherings as someone who was between opportunities or exploring different options, as if my deliberate choice to build something of my own was actually a failure to secure proper employment. Ashley's boss, Victoria Sterling, was a legendary figure in Austin's tech scene, a ruthless woman in her early 50s who'd built Apex Digital Solutions from a small consulting firm into a major player by acquiring smaller competitors, poaching talent from established corporations, and maintaining relationships with every influential business leader in Central Texas. Victoria wore custom-tailored suits that probably cost more than most people's monthly salaries, drove a Tesla Model S that she'd had wrapped in matte black, and spoke at conferences about disrupting traditional business models while maintaining the kind of social influence that could make or break careers with a single phone call or strategic introduction. Ashley worshipped Victoria's business acumen and social power with an intensity that bordered on obsession, constantly quoting her leadership philosophies, mimicking her aggressive negotiation tactics, and desperately seeking her approval in ways that made me uncomfortable but that I'd initially dismissed as normal professional ambition. But as my consulting business remained small rather than scaling rapidly into some kind of tech startup success story, Ashley began comparing my modest achievements to Victoria's empire building in ways that made it clear she viewed my career trajectory as fundamentally inadequate. Victoria says that successful entrepreneurs scale fast or fail fast. Ashley mentioned one evening while applying expensive skincare products that cost more than my monthly phone bill. She doesn't understand why someone with your skills would waste time on small clients instead of building something that actually matters. The casual cruelty of that statement, the implication that my clients didn't matter because they weren't Fortune 500 corporations, should have been a massive red flag, but I was still operating under the delusion that temporary financial stress was just testing our relationship rather than revealing Ashley's true character. As my severance money dwindled and my monthly income remained unpredictable, Ashley's embarrassment about my situation became increasingly obvious to anyone paying attention to our dynamics. She stopped inviting me to work events, claiming they were networking opportunities for serious professionals, and began attending social functions alone, telling people I was too busy with work rather than admitting she was ashamed to be seen with someone whose business cards didn't list a prestigious corporate title. When her friends asked about my career, she'd deflect with vague responses about the consulting industry being complicated and transitional, as if my work was too insignificant to explain properly. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in November, exactly 14 months after I'd been laid off from TechCore, when I received an email that would change everything about our relationship and my understanding of my own worth. I'd been contacted by someone named Marcus Webb, who claimed to represent a rapidly growing cybersecurity firm that was interested in discussing a potential partnership or consulting arrangement. The initial email was professional but vague, mentioning they'd heard about my work through industry connections and wanted to schedule a presentation meeting to discuss opportunities. This was exactly the kind of break I'd been working toward, a chance to present my capabilities to a larger organization that might lead to steady contract work or even a strategic partnership that could transform my one-man consulting practice into something much more substantial. I was genuinely excited about the opportunity and immediately began preparing a comprehensive presentation that would demonstrate not only my technical expertise but also my understanding of the cybersecurity market, my insights into industry trends, and my vision for innovative defense strategies that could give any organization a competitive advantage. This presentation represented months of work, research, and strategic thinking, and I knew it was one of the most important professional opportunities I'd had since starting my own business. When I told Ashley about the meeting and asked for her emotional support before such a crucial presentation, her response was so devastating and cruel that it would echo in my mind for months afterward, though not in the way she intended. Ashley was standing in front of our bathroom mirror applying her signature red lipstick when I approached her with genuine excitement about the Marcus Webb meeting, hoping to share this potentially game-changing opportunity with the woman I still believed was my partner in building our future together. She was dressed for another power lunch at some trendy downtown restaurant where she'd network with other marketing directors and complain about their respective boyfriends' career inadequacies, wearing a designer blazer that cost more than most of my monthly consulting fees and checking her phone constantly for messages from her Apex Digital Solutions colleagues. I started explaining the details of the presentation opportunity, describing Marcus Webb's initial contact, the potential for a strategic partnership, and how this meeting could represent the breakthrough my consulting practice needed to transform from a modest one-man operation into something much more substantial and financially stable. Ashley, this could be exactly what we've been waiting for, I said, genuinely hoping she'd share my enthusiasm about what felt like the first real validation of my entrepreneurial decision in months of financial uncertainty and professional isolation. Marcus Webb's firm specifically sought me out based on my reputation in the industry, and they want to discuss partnership opportunities that could completely change our financial situation. She turned away from the mirror with an expression I'd never seen before, not just dismissive or irritated, but actively disgusted, as if I'd just told her about some embarrassing personal failure rather than a legitimate business opportunity that represented months of hard work finally paying off. Her response was delivered with the kind of casual cruelty that can only come from someone who's been practicing their contempt in private. Support won't improve you, you're a joke to everyone around you, and they'll see it immediately. The words hit me like a physical blow, not just because of their devastating content but because of the matter-of-fact way she delivered them, as if she was stating something obvious that I should have already understood about my own worthlessness. She continued applying her lipstick with steady hands while explaining that my presentation would be a waste of everyone's time, that Marcus Webb would quickly realize he'd made a mistake in contacting me, and that I should probably prepare myself for another professional disappointment rather than getting my hopes up about opportunities that were clearly beyond my actual capabilities. "Ryan, you need to face reality," she said, adjusting her blazer and checking her appearance one final time before grabbing her purse and heading toward the door for another glamorous day at Apex Digital Solutions. "You've been playing pretend businessman for over a year now, and look where it's gotten you. Still struggling to pay your share of expenses, still taking meetings with nobodies who probably found your name in some directory, still pretending this consulting thing is going to magically transform into a real career." The casual way she dismissed Marcus Webb as a nobody without knowing anything about him or his company revealed everything about her mindset. If the opportunity wasn't connected to her prestigious world of Fortune 500 clients and glass tower offices, it couldn't possibly be legitimate or worthwhile. Instead of breaking my spirit as she clearly intended, Ashley's verbal attack ignited something dangerous and calculating within me that I hadn't felt since my TechCore days when I'd methodically dismantled sophisticated cyber threats, a cold, focused determination to prove my worth in ways that would make her regret every dismissive word she'd ever spoken about my capabilities. Her cruel assessment became the fuel for what would become the most strategic and satisfying professional victory of my entire career, though she wouldn't understand that until it was far too late to repair the damage her arrogance had caused. Unknown to Ashley, whose worldview was so narrow she couldn't imagine success existing outside her particular corporate ecosystem, the potential client, Marcus Webb, wasn't some desperate small business owner looking for affordable cybersecurity services, but rather the CEO of Cyberforge Industries, a rapidly expanding cybersecurity firm that was systematically poaching talent and clients from established companies like Apex Digital Solutions through aggressive recruitment strategies and innovative service offerings that were disrupting the entire industry. Marcus had built Cyberforge from a 5-person startup into a major player in just 3 years by identifying talented professionals who were undervalued by their current employers or, in my case, who had been discarded by corporate restructuring and were hungry to prove their worth in an environment that actually recognized and rewarded genuine expertise. The company specialized in providing comprehensive cybersecurity solutions to mid-market companies that couldn't afford the premium rates charged by established consulting firms but needed more sophisticated protection than basic antivirus software and firewalls could provide. Cyberforge's business model was brilliant in its simplicity: hire the best people that bigger firms overlooked, offer them equity and creative freedom, then deliver superior results at competitive prices while building long-term client relationships based on actual value rather than prestigious brand recognition. My presentation wasn't just about landing a standard consulting contract or discussing partnership opportunities. It was actually an elaborate interview process for a senior position that would make me one of the most powerful figures in Austin's rapidly evolving cybersecurity ecosystem. Marcus had been tracking my work for months through industry connections, former TechCore colleagues who'd moved to other companies, and even some of my current clients who'd praised my innovative approaches to threat assessment and defense strategy development. He'd specifically sought me out not despite my entrepreneurial consulting work, but because of it. He wanted someone who understood both the technical aspects of cybersecurity and the business challenges of building client relationships, someone who could think strategically about market opportunities while still delivering hands-on expertise that clients could trust with their most sensitive data and systems. The presentation meeting took place at Cyberforge's temporary Austin office, a sleek space in the domain that felt more like a tech startup than a traditional consulting firm, with open workspaces, multiple monitors displaying real-time threat assessments, and the kind of collaborative energy I'd missed since my TechCore days. Marcus Webb was exactly what I'd expected from his reputation: mid-40s, sharp-eyed, wearing an expensive but understated suit that suggested success without the flashy ostentation that characterized so many Austin tech executives. He listened intently as I walked through my comprehensive analysis of current cybersecurity trends, my insights into the specific vulnerabilities facing mid-market companies, and my vision for innovative defense strategies that could give organizations a genuine competitive advantage in an increasingly dangerous digital landscape. What impressed him most wasn't just my technical expertise, which he'd already verified through industry contacts, but my understanding of business dynamics and my ability to translate complex security concepts into clear value propositions that executives could understand and budget for. "Ryan, I'll be direct with you," Marcus said after I'd finished my presentation and answered his increasingly detailed questions about market opportunities and competitive positioning. "I didn't bring you here to discuss a consulting contract or a partnership arrangement. I brought you here to offer you a position that I think will interest you considerably more than anything you're currently doing." He explained that Cyberforge was preparing for an aggressive expansion into the Austin market, targeting established consulting firms like Apex Digital Solutions that had grown complacent and overpriced while delivering outdated solutions to clients who deserved better protection and more innovative thinking. Rather than offering me a standard senior analyst position, Marcus had something much more intriguing in mind. He wanted to create a new role specifically for me, Director of Competitive Intelligence, reporting directly to him with one primary mission that would allow me to use every skill I'd developed over the past 15 months of building my own business. My job would be systematically dismantling Apex Digital Solutions' market dominance by leveraging my insider knowledge of their weaknesses, my understanding of their client relationships, and my ability to develop superior solutions that would make their offerings look obsolete and overpriced by comparison. You'd be responsible for identifying their most valuable clients, understanding their service gaps, and developing strategies to demonstrate why those clients would be better served by CyberForge's more innovative and cost-effective approaches, Marcus explained with the kind of strategic thinking that reminded me why I'd been drawn to cybersecurity in the first place. It was essentially competitive intelligence made manifest in digital form. The compensation package was extraordinary: base salary of $120,000 plus equity, comprehensive benefits, company car, and performance bonuses tied directly to successful client acquisitions and competitive victories against firms like Apex Digital Solutions. But the most appealing aspect wasn't the money or the benefits. It was the opportunity to prove definitively that Ashley's assessment of my capabilities had been not just wrong, but catastrophically misjudged in ways that would have professional consequences for her and her precious consulting firm. I accepted Marcus's offer immediately, but with one crucial condition that he found both amusing and strategically sound. I wanted 3 weeks of complete secrecy before CyberForge announced my hiring or began their Austin market assault. During this period, I would play the role of a defeated man whose presentation had been a disaster, telling Ashley that she'd been right about my worthlessness while secretly working with Marcus to develop a comprehensive plan for corporate warfare against the company that employed the woman who'd called me a joke. Marcus understood the personal dynamics immediately and agreed to my request with obvious enthusiasm, recognizing that my intimate knowledge of Ashley's professional world would be invaluable for planning CyberForge's competitive strategy. For 3 weeks, I would maintain the facade of failure at home while spending my days at CyberForge's temporary office, analyzing Apex Digital Solutions' client base, identifying their service vulnerabilities, and developing detailed proposals for targeted client acquisition campaigns that would undermine their market position from multiple angles simultaneously. "This is going to be extremely satisfying for both of us," Marcus said as we shook hands on the deal that would transform my career and destroy Ashley's sense of superiority in ways she couldn't possibly anticipate. "You get to prove your worth to someone who clearly doesn't appreciate your capabilities, and I get the perfect inside knowledge to disrupt a competitor that's been charging premium rates for mediocre services for far too long." The strategic deception began immediately. That evening, I returned home looking appropriately dejected and told Ashley that the presentation had been exactly the disaster she'd predicted, that Marcus Webb had been unimpressed with my capabilities, and that she'd been absolutely right about my professional limitations. Her reaction was everything I'd expected and more, a mixture of vindicated satisfaction and barely concealed relief that her assessment of my inadequacy had been confirmed by an outside source. "I hate to say I told you so," she said while pouring herself a glass of wine to celebrate being right about my worthlessness, "but maybe now you'll finally accept that this consulting fantasy needs to end and you need to find a real job with a real company that can provide actual stability." I nodded sadly and agreed that she'd been wise to be skeptical about my entrepreneurial ambitions, all while privately planning the systematic destruction of everything she thought she understood about success, failure, and the true measure of professional worth. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in strategic deception and professional preparation that would have impressed even the most sophisticated corporate espionage specialists, as I spent my days at CyberForge's temporary office developing comprehensive battle plans while maintaining the perfect facade of defeated failure at home. Every morning, I'd leave the condo looking appropriately dejected, telling Ashley I was meeting with potential clients or exploring job opportunities, when in reality I was working directly with Marcus Webb and his team to analyze Apex Digital Solutions' vulnerabilities, client relationships, and market positioning with the kind of methodical precision I'd once applied to dismantling cyber threats. CyberForge had already conducted preliminary research on Apex's business model, but my insider knowledge provided the crucial details that transformed their general competitive strategy into surgical strikes designed to maximum damage with minimal effort. I knew which clients were dissatisfied with Apex's service quality, which accounts were vulnerable to competitive pressure, and most importantly, which senior staff members were overworked, underpaid, and potentially ready to jump ship if offered better opportunities with more innovative companies like CyberForge. Marcus was particularly interested in my insights about Victoria Sterling's management style and decision-making patterns, information that would prove invaluable when CyberForge began their systematic client acquisition campaign in the coming months. At home, Ashley's condescension reached heights I hadn't thought possible as she prepared for the Austin Tech Innovation Awards ceremony, the industry's most prestigious annual event where she expected to network with major players, potentially secure a promotion, and solidify her position among Austin's elite marketing professionals. The ceremony was scheduled for the third Friday of December at the Four Seasons downtown, with over 300 attendees representing every major technology company in Central Texas, and Ashley had been planning her outfit and networking strategy for months with the kind of meticulous attention she'd never shown toward my professional aspirations. She made it explicitly clear that I wasn't invited to accompany her to the ceremony, explaining with casual cruelty that it was a gathering for serious professionals, not wannabe consultants who can't even land a decent client meeting. Victoria specifically told me to bring only people who could contribute meaningfully to business conversations, Ashley said while trying on the designer dress she'd bought specifically for the occasion, a black number that probably cost more than my monthly consulting income had averaged over the past year. She doesn't want the networking opportunities diluted by people who aren't actually players in the industry, and honestly, after your disaster with that Marcus Webb character, I think we both know which category you fall into. The casual way she referred to Marcus as that character, dismissing him as some nobody who'd wasted her boyfriend's time, was particularly satisfying given what she'd learned about him in just a few days. I played my role perfectly, expressing disappointment about missing the ceremony while secretly coordinating with Marcus to ensure that CyberForge's surprise appearance would have maximum impact on both the industry and Ashley personally. Meanwhile, I was using my access to Ashley's professional network and her casual conversations about Apex's internal dynamics to provide Marcus with intelligence that would prove devastating when CyberForge launched their Austin offensive. I learned about upcoming client renewals, internal staffing issues, budget constraints, and strategic priorities that Ashley discussed freely, never imagining that her unemployed boyfriend was actually a competitive intelligence specialist gathering information for her company's most dangerous new rival. The irony was absolutely delicious. Ashley thought she was living with a failed entrepreneur who couldn't even secure basic consulting contracts, when in reality she was sharing her bed with someone who was systematically documenting her company's weaknesses and developing strategies to exploit them for competitive advantage. Marcus had also arranged for me to receive a complete professional makeover during this preparation period, understanding that my public debut as CyberForge's Director of Competitive Intelligence needed to make a visual statement about transformation and success that would be immediately apparent to everyone who'd previously dismissed my capabilities. The company provided a generous allowance for a new wardrobe, and I worked with a personal stylist to select suits, shirts, and accessories that projected executive-level competence and authority rather than the struggling consultant image I'd been maintaining for Ashley's benefit. The transformation was remarkable, expensive tailored suits that fit perfectly, luxury watches and accessories that suggested serious professional success, and even a new haircut that made me look like someone who belonged in boardrooms and strategy meetings rather than scraping for small clients. When I looked in the mirror during those fittings, I saw the person I'd always been capable of becoming if I'd had the right opportunity and support, which made Ashley's constant criticism and dismissal feel even more ridiculous and short-sighted. By the Thursday before the Austin Tech Innovation Awards ceremony, everything was in place for what Marcus had started calling Operation Revelation, CyberForge's surprise announcement of their Austin expansion, my public debut as their Director of Competitive Intelligence, and the beginning of a systematic campaign to disrupt Apex Digital Solutions' market dominance. Ashley spent that evening finalizing her networking strategy and talking excitedly about the business cards she'd ordered and the connections she hoped to make, completely unaware that the next 24 hours would fundamentally alter her understanding of professional success, personal relationships, and the dangerous consequences of underestimating people based on temporary setbacks rather than actual capabilities. The Austin Tech Innovation Awards ceremony was everything Ashley had promised and more, a glittering showcase of the city's most successful technology professionals gathered in the Four Seasons Ballroom, with crystal chandeliers casting elegant light over tables filled with executives, entrepreneurs, and industry leaders who collectively represented billions in revenue and thousands of high-paying jobs throughout Central Texas. I watched from across the room as Ashley networked confidently among her Apex Digital Solutions colleagues, wearing her designer dress and working the crowd with the practiced ease of someone who belonged in this rarefied atmosphere of corporate success and professional achievement. She looked absolutely radiant, completely in her element, discussing market trends and client strategies with the kind of animated enthusiasm she'd never shown for my consulting work, and I had to admit she was genuinely impressive when she was operating in her preferred professional environment. Victoria Sterling held court near the main stage, surrounded by a rotating circle of admirers and supplicants who sought her advice, approval, or business connections, and Ashley positioned herself strategically within that orbit, clearly hoping to cement her status as one of Victoria's most valuable team members. For the first hour of the ceremony, everything proceeded exactly as Ashley had anticipated. She made new connections, strengthened existing relationships, and basked in the reflected glory of working for one of Austin's most prestigious consulting firms. Then Marcus Webb walked onto the stage as the evening's surprise keynote speaker, and everything Ashley thought she understood about the Austin tech ecosystem began to crumble in ways that would have seemed impossible just moments earlier. Marcus had deliberately kept his speaking slot secret until the last moment, wanting to ensure maximum impact for CyberForge's official announcement of their aggressive expansion into the Austin market, and the surprise was absolutely perfect. The audience buzzed with curiosity as the ceremony organizers introduced him as the CEO of CyberForge Industries, a rapidly growing cybersecurity firm that was making waves throughout the Southwest with innovative solutions and competitive pricing that was disrupting traditional consulting models. I watched Ashley's face carefully as Marcus began his presentation, and I could see the exact moment when she realized this was the same Marcus Webb she'd dismissed as a nobody who'd wasted her boyfriend's time with a pointless meeting that had predictably ended in failure. Her confident expression shifted to confusion, then concern, then something approaching panic as Marcus explained CyberForge's expansion strategy and their plans to challenge established firms that had grown complacent about service quality and client satisfaction. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus announced with the kind of commanding presence that immediately captured the entire room's attention, CyberForge Industries is here to disrupt the Austin cybersecurity market by offering superior solutions at competitive prices, and we're doing it by recruiting the most talented professionals who've been undervalued or overlooked by the established players in this industry. The audience murmured with interest, and I could see several Apex Digital Solutions employees exchanging worried glances as they began to understand the implications of a well-funded competitor entering their market with aggressive intentions. But Marcus wasn't finished with his announcements, and the next part of his presentation would transform my life and destroy Ashley's sense of reality in ways that exceeded even my most optimistic expectations for revenge and vindication. I'm proud to introduce CyberForge's new Director of Competitive Intelligence, a brilliant cybersecurity specialist who brings not only exceptional technical expertise but also intimate knowledge of this market's opportunities and challenges, Marcus continued, pausing dramatically as the spotlight prepared to shift. Please welcome Ryan Martinez, who will be leading our Austin expansion and client acquisition initiatives. The ballroom erupted in surprised applause as I walked onto the stage wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, Italian leather shoes, and the kind of confident smile that comes from knowing you're about to prove every single person who doubted you absolutely and completely wrong. I looked exactly like what I was, a successful executive who belonged in rooms filled with the city's most influential business leaders, not the struggling consultant Ashley had described to her colleagues as someone who couldn't even handle a basic client meeting without embarrassing himself. The transformation was so complete that several people in the audience didn't immediately recognize me, and I could hear whispers of surprise and confusion as industry professionals tried to reconcile the polished executive on stage with whatever preconceptions they'd formed about my capabilities. Ashley's face had gone completely white, her mouth opening and closing without sound as she struggled to process the impossible reality of her unemployed boyfriend being introduced as a senior executive at a major technology company that was positioned to become her firm's most dangerous competitor. I delivered my speech with the kind of confident expertise that comes from genuinely understanding your subject matter and having the full support of an organization that values your contributions, discussing innovation in cybersecurity, the importance of challenging industry complacency, and the exciting opportunities that emerge when talented professionals are given the resources and authority to implement their vision for better client service. The audience responded enthusiastically, and I could see several Apex Digital Solutions employees looking increasingly uncomfortable as they realized that CyberForge's expansion represented a genuine threat to their market position and job security. When I finished speaking and returned to the audience, the networking dynamic had completely reversed. Instead of being someone Ashley was embarrassed to introduce, I was suddenly the most interesting person in the room, with executives and entrepreneurs approaching me to discuss business opportunities, partnership possibilities, and the strategic implications of CyberForge's Austin expansion. The weeks following the Austin Tech Innovation Awards ceremony were a systematic masterclass in corporate warfare and personal vindication that exceeded even my most optimistic expectations for both professional success and satisfying revenge against Ashley's devastating underestimation of my capabilities and worth. Within 48 hours of CyberForge's public announcement, I was implementing the competitive intelligence strategies Marcus and I had developed during our 3 weeks of secret preparation, using my insider knowledge of Apex Digital Solutions vulnerabilities to orchestrate a series of client acquisitions that would fundamentally undermine their market position and financial stability. The first major victory came from my detailed understanding of Apex's relationship with Meridian Financial, a mid-sized investment firm that had been dissatisfied with Apex's security assessments for months but hadn't found a credible alternative provider who could offer comparable expertise at competitive rates. I knew from Ashley's casual complaints about difficult clients that Meridian's CFO considered Apex's services overpriced and their response times inadequate, particularly during quarterly compliance audits that required rapid turnaround on security documentation. Using this intelligence, I crafted a presentation that directly addressed their specific concerns while demonstrating CyberForge's superior capabilities in areas where Apex had been consistently disappointing their expectations. Within 2 weeks, Meridian had terminated their contract with Apex and signed a comprehensive security services agreement with CyberForge worth $400,000 annually, a devastating blow to Apex's revenue and perfect validation of my strategic approach. The second major acquisition directly impacted Ashley's specific responsibilities and professional reputation within her firm. Through her casual conversations about work stress, I'd learned that TechFlow Dynamics, a software development company, was increasingly frustrated with Victoria Sterling's imperious management style and Apex's inflexible service delivery model. Ashley had been the primary account manager for TechFlow, and I knew she'd been struggling to maintain their satisfaction while juggling competing demands from Victoria's higher priority clients. I approached TechFlow's CEO with a customized proposal that offered superior technical services at 20% lower cost than Apex's rates, plus guaranteed dedicated account management and rapid response times that directly contrasted with Ashley's overstretched availability. TechFlow signed with CyberForge immediately, representing another $300,000 in annual revenue that disappeared from Apex's portfolio and made Ashley look incompetent to Victoria Sterling, who demanded explanations for why a previously stable client had suddenly defected to an upstart competitor. Within 6 weeks of my public debut, I had personally orchestrated the loss of over $1.3 million in annual revenue from Apex Digital Solutions, directly targeting accounts where I knew the company was vulnerable and clients were dissatisfied with their current service levels. Victoria Sterling was furious about the client defections, and her investigation into how a competitor had gained such detailed knowledge of Apex's internal weaknesses led directly to Ashley's professional destruction in ways that were both inevitable and absolutely satisfying. The investigation intensified when Victoria discovered that all major client losses had involved presentations that directly addressed complaints and concerns that clients had previously shared only with their Apex account managers, suggesting systematic intelligence gathering rather than random competitive pressure. Ashley became the primary suspect when Victoria realized she'd had direct involvement with all the lost accounts and had been the common denominator in a pattern that had cost the company over $1 million in annual revenue. "Your boyfriend is Cyberforge's director of competitive intelligence," Victoria said during Ashley's termination meeting, which I learned about through industry contacts. "You've been living with our biggest competitive threat while complaining about his failures, never realizing you were providing him with everything he needed to systematically destroy our client base." Ashley was fired immediately, escorted from the building by security, and blacklisted from several major consulting firms when Victoria's investigation revealed the extent of the intelligence breach and Ashley's role in creating the security vulnerability that had enabled my systematic assault on Apex's market position.